When she found me, noticed that I was taking photos, she asked me. We had a little exchange, at the end of which I called her a fascist. Look at me in Japan, kicking off the day of Garrison Hayes' videos. I'm doing this because I had no idea that I would be bumping up in real life to a policy that is right now trying to undermine the free and fair press in the United States. It takes place on a United flight to Japan from Washington, D.C., where I happen to be sitting across from the Assistant Press Secretary for the Pentagon, a young lady named Riley Podleski or Podleski. We'll talk about her in just a minute, but before I do, I want to thank Garrison for stepping in for this week. Did a stellar job yesterday in the face of an all-out YouTube failure, a complete debacle on the part of Google and YouTube on the very first day of him doing videos. So if you haven't watched those videos he did yesterday, please go back and check those out. A great way to support the channel, the work we do in the protection of our very democracy is to watch him while I'm gone. I know that sounds a little overwrought, and maybe it is, but you know what to do. So let me start here with the Blue Sky post that in the moment with Wi-Fi on the plane I posted. I said, currently on a flight to Japan watching a Pentagon Assistant Press Secretary, Riley Podleski, work on a document in the open on her laptop. She spent the last hour copying and pasting headlines from articles critical of the administration's hostility toward the First Amendment. She also spent a considerable amount of time on Donald Trump's True Social account and on Rapid Response 47 on Twitter. Not shocking that the staffer of a guy who DM'd classified war plans to a journalist is wildly careless with her important work in public. Important work, obviously. Big, fat, stanky air quotes. So listen, here's where we are in the United States of America. There is a constant assault on the First Amendment, a constant assault on the only single occupation listed in the Constitution as protected, the free and fair press. Right now, there's an all-out protest of people returning their press badges. They're not going to play the game. They're not going to be bullied. They're not going to be allowed they're going to sign a contract saying what they will and won't report on. That if they're going to report on something critical, the Pentagon has to first approve their critical coverage. What is this, China? So a little bit about this little princess on the plane who acted like an entitled little brat most of the flight. That's beside the point. I took photos, some of which we will put here. Unfortunately, it was with my iPhone, so you can't really make out what's going on because it was a pitch black cabin with a super bright laptop. But suffice it to say, she was copying and pasting things that were critical to the administration while also spending time on Donald Trump's personal Twitter account, copying things from that and putting it into her work document, her Pentagon document, as in her capacity as the Assistant Press Secretary for the Pentagon. When she found me, noticed that I was taking photos, she asked me. We had a little exchange, at the end of which I called her a fascist. When Brittany Page recounted this tale to a friend of hers, the person said, wow, he called her a fascist to her face? That seems a little hostile. I wouldn't say so. I would say it's hostile to call someone a fascist, call a fascist, if indeed your initial position isn't hostility toward fascism. I have hostility toward fascism and fascists, and I'm going to let them know to their face. I'm not going to wait until I'm on a YouTube video and act otherwise. This is me. The Jesse Dollemore that you encounter on YouTube is the Jesse Dollemore out in the wild. So, this is an unusual situation, obviously. And it actually maps on to the reality that we're facing in the United States right now. Pete Hegseth put this policy into place. He's out there making the rounds, bragging about what he's doing. He was talking to the Nepo baby in chief over at Fox News, Peter Doocy, and this is how he explained what's taking place with the policy. And no shocker, no surprise, it is riddled with misdirection and straight up lies. Watch this.
We're setting clear rules at the Pentagon. We're not playing games. We're not allowing everybody to roam around the building. You know, that was the policy before, Peter. If you were a Pentagon reporter, you could just walk around the building. No badge, no escort, no nothing. Walk into offices, talk to anybody. Who knows where there's classified information. We're making the rules more like you might say the White House. Can you roam the White House wherever you want?
Typically not without getting a Secret Service guy up in my grill.
So we're just normalizing it. Yes, you can be in the press area, briefing room, but if you want to move around the building, you're going to have a badge. It's going to be clear. You're going to be escorted when you do so, and we have expectation that you're not soliciting classified or sensitive information. I think the American people see things like that as absolute common sense. The Pentagon Press Corps can squeal all they want. We're taking these things seriously. They can report. They just need to make sure they're following rules.
The thing Pete Hegseth is not taking seriously is the Constitution, is his oath to the very document that he's taken multiple times to support and defend the Constitution and the contents therein against all enemies, foreign and domestic. This is an assault on the Constitution, not just an assault on the free press. They go hand in hand. And also all of the nonsense about wandering throughout the halls of the Pentagon, and then that he has so little faith in the military members and contractors and DOD personnel that he has to worry that the mere solicitation or ask about whatever military operation, he calls that soliciting top secret or classified information. The same Pete Hegseth that shared confidential, sensitive, top secret, highly classified war plans on a signal thread against regulations, against the law, with a reporter from The Atlantic, Jeffrey Goldberg. His wife and dopey brother was in one of these message groups where he's sharing war plans. And he wants to whine and act like, oh, I'm a patriot about leaks. Pete Hegseth is anything but a patriot. He is anti-American. He is anti-patriot. And this entire endeavor on the part of the administration to assault the free press is nothing but that. And it is resulting in reporters and journalists all across the spectrum protesting this particular policy, this particular assault on the Constitution. And not just CNN and some of the people that you would hear Donald Trump attack, but even Fox News. Here's Brian Stelter explaining about the kind of the mass walkout that's taking place, people surrendering their badges to work in the Pentagon. They're not surrendering their role as a reporter about the goings-on in the Pentagon, but just their access to the physical space of the Pentagon.
Reporters have been showing up at the Pentagon today and handing in their press passes. This is an extraordinary moment showing that the Pentagon is not changing, not backing away from this drastic, radical new policy. And the news outlets, the reporters, the editors, the media lawyers who said this is unacceptable, they're not changing their tune either. So all the major networks, all the major wire service and newspaper reporters who cover the Pentagon day in, day out are turning in their credentials. And essentially, as of tomorrow, you won't have those journalists able to work out of the Pentagon complex anymore.
So look, as much as Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump and these fascist pukes, and then what they want to categorize this as the press squealing. Oh, they're squealing about this. No, they are registering professional complaints about something that is illegal, that is unconstitutional, that is fascistic, that is authoritarian in nature. That this is not American. It's American under Donald Trump. They want to normalize the shredding of our normal rights under the Constitution because they want it to be whatever Donald Trump says goes. That includes Donald Trump, and that includes Pete Hegseth, that includes Riley Podolsky, the former Marjorie Taylor Greene staffer. That should give you an idea of where we are in the United States. These are dangerous times. These aren't normal times. It's time for all of us to stand up. It's time for you, if you weren't planning on it, to attend the No Kings protest Wherever you live, you don't have to travel to Washington, D.C. to do so. Find your local, we'll put a link in the description below, find your local protest, your local march, to lift your voice one with another to let this administration know you're not going to stand for the shredding of the Constitution. You're not going to lay back while fascism takes root in America. You're not going to be silent while young Republican staffers, the future of the Republican Party, private DMs about putting people in gas chambers and gleefully using the N-word and calling black people monkeys. This is not the ideals, the things that we aspire to as a nation. And it's so troubling that here I am on a trip 5,000 miles away from the United States, the west coast of the United States, feeling compelled to still talk about these things. I would love your feedback. As always, I invite you to comment below this video wherever you're watching it, whether that be on Facebook or YouTube. If you're watching on Facebook, make sure you're liked and you follow the page there, Dollemore Daily, that you're subscribed to the YouTube channel for all of the updates, all of the reporting that we're eventually going to end up. Look, I've said a long time in my doing this that I'm not a journalist, I'm not a reporter. But the roles are shifting. This is an ever fluid environment where I'm actually reporting on something that happened to me on a plane with screenshots talking about naming names, my interactions with administration officials, a position I never thought I would be in. But here we are. Anyway, you can comment below. You can also call the voicemail line 714-576-4054. And of course, as always, you can email me, daily@dollemore.com. Please consider supporting the work that we do here on this channel and on our podcast. You can, for $1.99 a month, become a channel member. Click the link below, or you can go over to patreon.com/IDoubtItPodcast. If you're not in a financial position to help support this work that way, don't worry about it. Take care of yourself. But a thing that you could do that is absolutely free is engage with this content, support Garrison Hayes while he's guest hosting while I'm away, or away as much as I can be. All that goes a long way to doing your part to move the needle. Anyway, I love and appreciate you very much. Hopefully I won't see you too much over the next few days. Be genuine and take care of one another.
But the reality is that kids do stupid things, especially young boys. They tell edgy, offensive jokes. Like, that's what kids do.
This is the Dollemore Daily. I'm guest host Garrison Hayes. Good to be with you. Yesterday, I talked about this story out of Politico, a group chat of rising stars in the GOP, the young Republicans, the ones who are and will be running campaigns, sitting on committees, making decisions, shaping policy, spending taxpayer dollars, the ones who have the ear of donors and elected officials. They say, this is what the young people want, and this is what we're interested in, and this is what we believe. These people are calling rape epic. They're using racial slurs. They're joking about slavery and fantasizing about putting their political enemies in gas chambers. Vice President J.D. Vance was asked about this bombshell report yesterday during an appearance on a Turning Point USA podcast, and he had this to say.
You're making a little bit of news here yesterday on X, formerly known as Twitter, about this Politico story, but I think it ties in because we're talking about the celebratory nature of some, not many, maybe not most, but some, and it was disgusting about Charlie's assassination. There is a story, and I believe the two stories are connected, that came out of Politico yesterday. Blake, explain this for our audience, for those who don't know.
We don't need to wallow in it too much, but so Politico has a story where somehow they got their hands on something like 28,000 messages in some group chat of, I think, 12 people that nobody's ever heard of, but they decided to just publish every single thing in this chat, whatever they found that they thought was the most salacious. And I think 10 years ago, there would have been a very different response to it. But people are starting to learn from this, and the vice president is one of the reasons why. So you tweeted this. This is far worse than So what you did is, instead of reacting to the story itself, you just posted what Jay Jones, our friend in Virginia who's running for AG as the Democrat, had said, where he wanted his political opponents to die. And then when someone thought he might be kidding, he called to, make it clear, actually, it wasn't a joke. I was serious. That's how people change their mind. And you just pointed out, quote, "This is far worse than anything said in any college group chat. And the guy who said it could become the AG of Virginia. I refuse to join the pearl clutching when powerful people call for political violence." And we have 14 million views on that.
Yeah.
And
just a little viral, Mr. Vice President.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll let the tweet speak for itself. I'll say a couple of additional things. First of all, a person who is very politically powerful, who is about to become one of the most powerful law enforcement officers in the country, that person seriously wishing for political violence and political assassination is 1,000 times worse than what a bunch of young people, a bunch of kids say in a group chat, however offensive it might be. That's just reality. And if you allow yourself to be distracted by this person's incredible endorsement, disgusting endorsement of political assassination by focusing on what kids are saying in a group chat, grow up. I'm sorry. Focus on the real issues. Don't focus on what kids say in group chats. But there's another angle to this that I just have to be honest about. I mean, I'm like an old guy at this point. I'm 41 years old. I have 3 kids. I grew up in a different world, right? Where not most of the stupid things that I did when I was a teenager and a young adult, they're not on the internet. Like, I'm going to tell my kids, especially my boys, don't put things on the internet. Like, be careful with what you post. If you put something in a group chat, assume that some scumbag is going to leak it in an effort to try to cause you harm or cause your family harm. But the reality is that kids do stupid things, especially young boys. They tell edgy, offensive jokes. Like, that's what kids do. And I really don't want us to grow up in a country where a kid telling a stupid joke, telling a very offensive stupid joke, is cause to ruin their lives. And at some point, we're all going to have to say, enough of this BS. We're not going to allow the worst moment in a 21-year-old's group chat to ruin a kid's life for the rest of time. That's just not okay. Like, we live in a digital world. This stuff is now etched in stone online. We're all going to have to say, you know what? No. We're not doing this. We're not canceling kids because they do something stupid in a group chat. And if I have to be the person who carries that message forward, I'm fine with it.
You know, what happened to the party of accountability? What happened to holding people accountable for their actions? The absolute infantilization of these grown men. Kids do stupid things, especially young boys. Nobody's ever heard of them. These people had to be elected. These are grown men. What he does here is he sets a permissive tone toward extremist rhetoric inside well-known leadership pipelines for a reason. It's a signal that this is okay. This isn't that big of a deal. The party that I'm trying to lead, this kind of behavior is fine. To be very clear, these weren't teenagers. Reporters pegged them between the ages of 24 and 35. Many of them hold leadership posts. At least one of them is an elected official. My buddy Adam Mockler from Midas Touch Media pressed this question during a News Nation town hall last night. Check it out.
Just think about this. We saw these Nazi group chats, which I'm sure you condemn, right? This Nazi group chat.
Well, we can talk about it.
Do you condemn it?
I want to talk about it.
Wait, so when they said gas chambers,
disavow.
When they say gas chambers, you won't. So you're like JD Vance. You just won't condemn this?
Well, I actually had JD on the show today. We had a whole conversation.
You guys can all condemn this, right?
Hell yes.
Thank you.
Hold on.
All right.
Hold on.
But
Chris, can you condemn that?
Here's the point, of course. But that's easy. What I'm
for him.
But you know what?
Extremely telling. A serious question. Can someone tell me why is it that they won't just roundly condemn this? Why is it that they just won't say this is not, no, this is bad. This is very bad. This isn't what Charlie Kirk stood for. This isn't what TPUSA stands for. This is terrible. But I'll tell you why. It's because they're okay with it. That's what I think. That's my opinion. But what's your opinion? What do you think? Why is it that they won't condemn this stuff? Why is it that they are making so many excuses and infantilizing these men, young men perhaps, but men nonetheless? Why is it that they're kind of treating them as if they are silly little boys instead of just saying, no, this is wrong, and they are old enough to know better? Maybe you have an answer for me because I don't know. Again, I'm Garrison Hayes, guest hosting for Jesse Dollemore this week. Make sure you like this video and subscribe if you aren't already. I'd also love it if you came over to my channel and subscribed over there as well. I talk a little bit about, in one video, about Prager University and how the GOP, how conservatives really just want your kids to be dumb. I think that kind of connects here. And so go check that video out. The link to my channel is below. I want you to look at this map right here on the screen. This may become our reality if the Supreme Court does what it looks like they are planning to do. This may be one of the most important civil rights cases of our time. And it looks like the Supreme Court is poised to gut a major protection in the Voting Rights Act. And I want to talk about it. What happens in the Louisiana redistricting case could decide whether or not black voters anywhere in America can still use Section 2 to stop the quiet, sinister, but not so subtle erasure of black political power. Watch this.
So this is what the party pickups would be for congressional districts. Republicans, 5. Missouri, 1. North Carolina, 1. Ohio, 2 or 3. Indiana, 1 or 2. Florida, still discussion down there, but that could be another gold mine for them if they tipped it even further their way. Kansas, 1. New Hampshire, 1. And Nebraska. Democrats, Utah, California, Maryland. Look at this. If you offset California and Texas, Missouri and Utah, North Carolina and Maryland, everything left over is an advantage to the Republicans. And don't forget, the Supreme Court is considering what could really be the end of the Voting Rights Act, which would protect minority groups. So you don't have a state that's half black, for example, that elects only one congressional member and everybody else goes to the Republicans that would represent that population in some ways. So if that is gutted, Democrats could lose 19 seats. This would be a huge amount. But this is also a measure of how much the White House is concerned about this, because Donald Trump knows if the Democrats get the House again, there could be new investigations just like last time. There could be a new impeachment. There could be a lot of impediment to these plans that right now the Republicans in the House and Senate are letting run like a freight train.
This is the Dollemore Daily. I'm guest host Garrison Hayes, and I need you to be paying attention to this case. I'm going to spend some time with this case, breaking it down for you, kind of talking a little bit about what's at stake and what's happening in the case. But if you stick around, at the end of this video, I'll tell you what I think needs to happen next, how I think concerned voters can respond to this, what concerned voters can say to their representatives and candidates and the like. So make sure you stick around for that. Okay, let's get into this. So the Supreme Court heard oral arguments for Louisiana versus Calais, which challenges Louisiana's 2024 congressional maps. This map added a second majority black district to the state after courts found that the prior map likely intentionally diluted black voting power under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. We are in the weeds, but just know that this is important. There was clear discrimination. The courts went through a rigorous analysis and found that the maps broke the law. And then a group of self-described non-African American voters led by a white man named Philip Calais argued that these maps are racist against non-black people and violate the Equal Protection Clause. If you've ever played Uno, they basically did like an Uno reverse card, like in the middle of the game, like, boom, you said that these are racist. Well, you're the real racist. I know you are, but what am I? Kind of thing, you know, like that's the play. And so the Supreme Court took the case, even though a nearly identical case had been decided less than 2 years ago. And so I want you to listen to what Associate Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, who I got the sense was exhausted, very exhausted and confused by the circular arguments being made in court yesterday. I want you to listen to what she had to say here.
I guess I'm thinking of it, of the fact that remedial action absent discriminatory intent is really not a new idea in the civil rights laws. And my kind of paradigmatic example of this is something like the ADA. Congress passed the Americans with Disabilities Act against the backdrop of a world that was generally not accessible to people with disabilities. And so it was discriminatory in effect because these folks were not able to access these buildings. And it didn't matter whether the person who built the building or the person who owned the building intended for them to be exclusionary. That's irrelevant. Congress said the facilities have to be made equally open to people with disabilities if readily possible. I guess I don't understand why that's not what's happening here. The idea in Section 2 is that we are responding to current day manifestations of past and present decisions that disadvantage minorities and make it so that they don't have equal access to the voting system, right? They're disabled. In fact, we use the word disable in Milligan. We say that's a way in which you see that these processes are not equally open.
She's effectively responding to the question, what counts as racism in this court? And underneath that is this assumption that in order for racism to count, it has to be intentional and deliberate. But what I hear her saying here is that if the outcome is verifiably racist, if the map splits communities so that Black voters can't elect their candidate of choice under Section 2's results test, that matters. It means that they've broken the law. That's why we have these rigorous tests to look at the size and compactness of a community, the political cohesion of a group, whether or not the majority usually defeats the minority's choice. All of that stuff is taken into account in a very sophisticated way. It's all taken into consideration. But the people who want to completely gut the VRA, the Voting Rights Act, are hyper-focused on one word: intent. Did some big bad guy in a KKK hood say, let's keep the Black people suppressed? Let's keep them down, keep them under the thumb. That's what they're looking for. That kind of smoking gun, that kind of red flag. And that brings me to what I think is a completely shameful reinterpretation of the Equal Protection Clause by the Supreme Court. If you watched the affirmative action decision, you saw that the court is more concerned about the way remedying racism could potentially disprivilege white people than it is about the fact, the very present fact of discrimination against Black folks. That's essentially what they're saying. They're saying that the fact of discrimination, the weakening of Black political power, the dilution of Black voting representation, those things are real and present. And they're responding to those things by saying, yeah, maybe, but we've got to protect the white folks against the way you are trying to fix the discrimination against the Black folks, which is kind of crazy, right? It's a little crazy. And I think I can already kind of hear you, maybe not you, but someone saying, right, you two wrongs don't make a right. Like, how you can't discriminate against one group of people just because that group of people discriminated against the other group of people, right? Like, you can't discriminate against white folks because white people discriminated against Black folks. But I want to look at the numbers. I want to dig into the numbers here. About 33% of Louisiana is Black. That's a third. This case is over their desire to go from one of the 6 congressional districts in the state being Black majority, being representative, being districts that guarantee equal voting protection. They're trying to move from 1 of 6 to 2 of 6. This isn't a thing where they're trying to have 4 out of the 6 congressional districts in the state be Black majority. No, they're actually just trying to move to parity. They're trying to move it from 1 of 6 to 2 of 6. And they're being sued for it. This isn't about taking advantage of white people, but the question is whether or not the same can be said in the other direction. You cannot look at the way the SCOTUS, the Supreme Court, is reinterpreting equal protection and not come to the conclusion that white people are more privileged. Their concerns are taken more seriously than non-white people at a judicial level. Time and again, Associate Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson asked the question, wasn't the starting point of all of this years ago, wasn't the starting point of this litigation discrimination? Didn't we look at the details years ago? Didn't we study the facts? And didn't we come to the conclusion that Black people were being discriminated against in Louisiana? Why isn't remedying that discrimination, she's asking, a compelling state interest? I want you to listen to her exchange with Louisiana's attorney here.
I don't understand why your answer to Justice Kagan's question about is this a compelling state interest is no. The answer is obviously yes, that you have an interest in remedying the effects of racial discrimination that we identify using this tool. Whether you go too far in your remedy is another issue, right?
Your Honor, I think step zero in all of these cases, it was certainly step zero in the Robinson litigation, is the plaintiffs came in and said, we want another majority Black district.
I thought they came in and said, we are not receiving equal electoral opportunity because our votes are being diluted.
Which is the same way of saying we deserve a second
No,
majority
it's not,
Black
because that, again, just trust me on this. The second electoral or second district is a remedy that one could offer for a problem that we've identified. And the whole Robinson litigation was about identifying the problem. Is this really happening? In many Section 2 cases, the court says, you're wrong, you're fine. There is not an electoral opportunity being denied to you, go away. In this case, the court said, I see. I'm looking at the factors. I appreciate what you're saying. You've proven that we have this problem. And so the next question is, how do we go about remedying it?
So there you have it. There it is. I'm getting to the point where I think more and more people are going to be calling for the expansion of the courts. I think they're going to be saying, expand the courts. I think folks are going to be asking 2028 candidates if expanding the court is a part of their plan if they're elected. You know, this institution has become increasingly hostile toward democracy. It is consistently limiting the rights of minority groups, of women, consistently undermining the power of Congress, reinterpreting laws. I think that's going to happen. So anyway, tell me what you think. Should pro-democracy candidates focus on expanding the courts to retry these cases or protect against a right-wing interpretation of the law in future cases? That's the question. Let me know what you think down in the comments. I'm Garrison Hayes. I'm guest hosting for Jesse Dollemore this week for a few days. Make sure you like this video and subscribe if you aren't already subscribed. I'd also love it if you came over and subscribed to my channel at Garrison Hayes. There's definitely a link below as well. Thank you all, as always, for such a warm embrace, warm welcome to the Dollemore Daily. I really do appreciate all of the kind words that I see in the comments. That's very, very nice of you. If you missed yesterday's videos, there's some great videos. Yesterday, I talked about Letitia James and what's happening with her, another kind of court case that we should keep an eye on. So go back and check that stuff out. Thanks, as always, for watching. I'll see you next time.
You know, I want to give some unsolicited advice because I love the people in this country. And in cities and towns around this country, they're going to have these No Kings rally. I would advise people, again, unsolicited, find out if there's a rally near where you are and stay away. I would hate to see innocent people hurt.
This is the Dollemore Daily. I'm guest host Garrison Hayes. It is becoming abundantly clear that this administration and its allies are terrified of the American people rising up in protest. This weekend, more than 2,500 No Kings Day protests are planned across the country, across all 50 states and the District of Columbia. Are you going? I'm curious. As Axios reports, there is growing frustration, you probably feel it, about the ongoing government shutdown. There is widespread opposition to the way that the president is using the military to crack down on Democratic-led cities across America. And people are stepping up. But MAGA world is doing everything in their power to frame these demonstrations as something that they are not. I want you to watch this clip right now.
Can you make a 5-second prediction here for us? How long does this go on?
I hope it ends soon. I don't think it will end before the Hate America rally on the mall on Saturday, where all the Marxists and Antifa people and all the people who hate Trump and hate America will be there. After that, though, I hope there's a couple of sensible Democrats who will come to their senses over in the Senate and vote the right way to do the right thing that they have always done every time in the past in their career. They need to do it now for the people, for the American people.
They are throwing it all at the wall. Marxists, Antifa, hate America, hate Trump. It's like everything. Like, let's just try to like smear it and call it whatever. Maybe one of these will stick is kind of the idea, right? Just throwing it all at the wall. Donald Trump's Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, had this to say just the other day.
We're on day 15, and it doesn't look like there's any sign of a deal.
Well, there's a thought out there that they're at least waiting to this crazy No Kings rally this weekend, which is going to be the farthest left, the hardest core, the most unhinged in the Democratic Party, which is a big title, and no kings equal no paychecks. We are paying our military today. The Pentagon went into surplus funds and will be able to make the paychecks.
Farthest left, hardest core, more unhinged in the entirety of the most unhinged people in the entirety of the Democrat. Is that you? Is he describing you? Maybe he's describing you. I don't know. Perhaps we should give them a little bit of a reminder of what the No Kings Day looked like earlier this year. I believe on the president's birthday, one of the largest protest days in American history. Watch this.
More than 5 million people turned out for the No Kings protest on Saturday. That was also the day of Donald Trump's birthday. According to one data analyst, it may have been the single biggest day of demonstrations in our country's history. 50,000 people showed up in New York City. 70,000 people marched in Seattle, Washington. In Los Angeles, where protests have been taking place all week against Donald Trump's immigration policies, as well as his deployment of the National Guard against the wishes of that state's governor and Los Angeles city mayor. More than 200,000 people protested. This was the scene in Philadelphia, where 80,000 people were seen marching down the Ben Franklin Parkway, waving flags and chanting.
Well, if you do decide to go out this weekend, Sean Hannity has some unsolicited advice for you. And I want you to pay attention, pay very close attention to the image that he's trying to plant in the minds of his viewer. This is very important. I want to help you kind of see through some of the things that are happening here. So watch this image. Listen to the language. Listen to what he calls back to. Watch this.
Stephen Miller is with us. I want to give some unsolicited advice because I love the people in this country. And in cities and towns around this country, they're going to have these No Kings rally. And to me, it has all the feel of the environment in the summer of 2020. The mostly peaceful riots where, a couple of dozen dead Americans, thousands of injured cops, billions in property damage. I would advise people, again, unsolicited, find out if there's a rally near where you are and stay away. I would hate to see innocent people hurt.
Stay away, he says, because if you go, it might be like the 2020 protests. It might be looting and fires and destruction of property, because that's what they want you to think. That's what they want you to associate the BLM protests of 2020 with, even though we know factually, the data, we know factually, mostly peaceful protests. They're mostly peaceful. People had a great time. I went to several protests in 2020. They were phenomenal. They were outstanding. People were so kind. There was singing, there was chanting, but there was no violence. And we know that to be true. The data backs it up. But what they do is that they play over and over and over and over again these images that embed in your mind and in the public memory that this was something that was violent, but it wasn't. But I think they're telling you to stay away for a different reason. Because if you go, you might be susceptible to the loads of propaganda that they are preparing to pump into the media, to tell you that these people were violent, and that these people were something that they aren't. So here's my unsolicited advice to you. I'll take a page out of the Sean Hannity book. Do not obey in advance. Take lots of videos if you go. Look out for each other. Be safe. That's what I think you should do. That's it for me in this one. I'm Garrison Hayes, guest hosting for the Jesse Dollemore, my friend. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to this channel, to the Dollemore channel, Jesse Dollemore's channel, if you aren't already. I'd also love it if you came over to subscribe to my channel. The link is definitely down in the bio, Garrison Hayes. Thank you all so much for the warm welcome yesterday. I've said this a few times, but YouTube went down or had some type of glitch of some sort. So if you missed yesterday's video, go back, take a look, check out what we have going on. I also explained that Jesse's out, so I'm guesting for a few days, which is very, very exciting for me. That's it for me in this one. I'll see you next time. Let's be very, very clear. Being a Nazi isn't costly enough in America. It's more costly to criticize the president. It's more costly to criticize dead podcasters or the Secretary of Defense. It's more costly to criticize those folks than it is to be a literal Nazi sympathizer. This is the Dollemore Daily. I'm guest host Garrison Hayes. Republicans have a Nazi problem. There was a swastika in a MAGA Republican's congressional office this week, not in a tweet, not in a meme, not something that they accidentally reposted, a literal swastika inside the people's house. Now, apparently, during a virtual meeting, a viewer spotted an American flag that was altered so that the stripes formed a swastika behind a staffer. His name is Angelo Elia in the D.C. office of Representative Dave Taylor of Ohio. Taylor called it vile and deeply inappropriate and said that it doesn't reflect his office and asked Capitol Police to investigate, which all makes sense. Speaker Johnson had this to say.
That's my understanding. With regard to the swastika thing, this happened last night. A Republican congressman, allegedly one of his staffers had something in the background or something in a Zoom. That's what I heard this morning. He says that that's not his and there's a proper investigation ongoing, and the congressman did exactly what he should have done, and that is report it. It's under investigation, and I can't comment on it any further until that's done, but I will say, obviously, that is not the principles of the Republican Party. We stand for the founding principles of America. You want me to articulate them for you right now? Individual freedom, limited government, the rule of law, peace through strength, fiscal responsibility, free markets, human dignity, the things that lead to human flourishing. We have stood against that. We fought the Nazis. We defended that evil ideology. We roundly condemn it, and anybody in any party who espouses it, we're opposing that.
But many people are asking, how did it get there? Right? Past all of the security. If you've ever been to the United States Capitol, you know that you have to go through layers of security and people will check your bags, that not just any old body. You can't just waltz into a member of Congress's office. You got to have an appointment. You can maybe walk into kind of the first layer, but to get deep into the office, you got to have access and someone has to give you that access. And so the question is, how did it get there? Truly, how did it get there? But beyond that, perhaps more importantly, what makes them so confident that this doesn't reflect the values of his office? How do you know that? How do you know that? This didn't happen in a vacuum, right? You have young Republican leaders saying that they love Hitler in official young Republican group chats. You have a GOP mega donor in Elon Musk throwing what looked like a Sig Heil, looked just like a Nazi salute. We are in the reaping season of something that I think the GOP and the edgelord media folks have been sowing for years. You reap what you sow. When you downplay what's happening here, it tells someone that it's okay to do it over there. It feels absolutely insane that I even have to say this, but let's be very, very clear. Being a Nazi isn't costly enough in America. It's more costly to criticize the president. It's more costly to criticize dead podcasters or the Secretary of Defense. It's more costly to criticize those folks than it is to be a literal Nazi sympathizer, which I think is absolutely insane. But that's the America that we're living in. Some significant portion of the electorate saw all of this, know all of this, and they will still vote for these people at midterms, or maybe not. I don't know. That's what I think. Tell me what you think. I'm Garrison Hayes, guest hosting for Jesse Dollemore here on the Dollemore Daily. Make sure you like this video and you subscribe if you aren't already. I'd also love it if you came over to my channel and subscribed over there. The link is below. Thank you guys so much for the warm welcome. Yesterday, as you probably know, YouTube had some glitch. Something went down. I don't know. But if you missed yesterday's videos, go back and take a look. I am sitting here in the seat for a couple of days while Jesse is out, which is so exciting for me. So again, come check out my channel. You can, of course, follow Jesse on all platforms at Dollemore. Subscribe to this channel if you aren't already. That's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one.
Many of you are aware that my dear friend and brother of choice, not of blood, Brett McAfee, suffered a near-fatal medical emergency last summer while our families were on vacation in Scotland. I appreciate to no end the outpouring of support for Brett that you all gave. And I'm also very happy to report that he is safe and healing and working that long path of recovery. What I've probably not told you about Brett is that beyond being an excellent friend, he's also a talented writer. We have been the best of friends since we were kids, and I have been continually inspired by his creativity and by the truly singular take that he has on life. Over 2 decades ago, he wrote a poem called The Grateful Child. It's an acknowledgement of all the simple strengths that we tend to overlook. Written from the perspective of a young person, multiple grateful children express gratitude to their parents for the elements that make them who they are. The accounting of these everyday gifts inspires a clear reminder that we should not take anything for granted. I've shared Brett's remarkable poem with numerous people over the years, and a reoccurring response is that this should be a book. Well, we finally decided to listen to those people. The Grateful Child is not only a children's book for adults in your life, it's also an adult's book for children in your life. Everyone will appreciate its straightforward yet elegant celebration of life's little endowments. Click the link below to pre-order now, or simply scan this QR code and order your copy or copies today. But this being an illustrated book, we could not survive on the words alone. To pair with Brett's touching words, we searched all over for an illustrator who could bring the Grateful Child to visual life. We landed on somebody right here in the community from this show. Leah Farshid is an internationally acclaimed illustrator who, like you, is also an audience member. The moment we saw the first images that Leah drew to accompany Brett's text, we knew we had a perfect combination. It brings me tremendous joy to share my best friend's beautiful poem and Leah's spectacular images with the world. Everyone can benefit from The Grateful Child, just as I benefit from Brett's lifelong friendship. Share this beautiful book with your children. Share it with your parents or other relatives. The Grateful Child is an easy and exceptional way to show appreciation for someone in your life, young or old. Support someone you love and support this channel by giving The Grateful Child. Click the link below to pre-order now, or simply scan this QR code. I am pretty sure your children need a copy, and your mom, your nieces and your nephews, your Grandpa Charlie too. Don't forget Grandpa Charlie. I think he'd love this. Make The Grateful Child a part of your life. It has been such an excellent part of mine.